Hi there, it's Jacob from Prodo, and welcome to the 20th of May's Housing Hive. To introduce today's session, I was joined by the Hyde Group's Digital Communications and Social Media Manager, Emma Morrison, and Prodo's very own Group Account Director, Jenny Bradshaw. Now, Hyde is an award-winning housing association based in London, managing over 40,000 homes across the southeast of England and neighbouring areas. And being established in 1967, they've come a really long way since then, with digital transformation being one of their key objectives. We had a great chat with Emma today about how they've evolved their internal communication systems first in order to pave the way for enhanced employee engagement and new ways of working, which obviously has been great for them across the pandemic. Hyde have seen some amazing and increasing stats when it comes to employee engagement. So this is a real success story, and it was a great webinar today. So hopefully you enjoy.
Right, so Hyve, well, it's obviously the inspiration behind your Housing Hive. That's what we all say. Hyve anyway, although ours is spelt with a Y, so it's a play on the word of the name of the business, which is Hyde. So yes, Hyve is our corporate intranet, and it was relaunched 2 years ago, so in April 2019. The former intranet, which we'd been working on replacing sort of in a phased way with Jenny and the team over the last 5 years, ever since I've been at Hyde rather, was very sort of one-way broadcast, sort of quite traditional, quite inflexible. There was no way for our employees to ask questions, give feedback, anything like that. So what we've been working on over the last few years is bit by bit transforming everything into a sort of modern, flexible, two-way interactive intranet that staff could fully engage with, and sort of in a two-way sort of process. And the last part of the puzzle, if you like, was launched in April 2019, which was when we launched Hyve, which is basically the hub, the homepage of our intranet. And at the same time that we launched our new intranet Hyve, we also launched Workplace by Facebook, which is our private social media network, and that is sort of integrated into our intranet. So they both work sort of really seamlessly together to sort of deliver two-way internal communications across the business. And you can imagine over the last, year, having an interactive and modern and flexible intranet has been absolutely invaluable to us as a business. We always say we don't know what we'd have done with the old intranet if we'd have had to have dealt with the sort of sudden shift in working practices and all our staff working from home all of a sudden with the sort of one-way broadcast, inflexible, unresponsive intranet. So does that answer that question, Jenny?
Yeah, no,
you know me, I will just waffle on forever about the intranet. It really is my passion.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant, and it's interesting that you talk about particularly sort of the how that's been beneficial over the last year. So what's the engagement been like sort of since you launched Hyve and Workplace, and have you seen a particular shift in that with the pandemic, or was it more a case of that engagement was already at a level with the new platforms, and actually that's carried you through this last year?
Yeah, so the new intranet was reasonably new when the sort of the pandemic really hit last March. So it was fairly well sort of bedded in, and we had reasonably good levels of engagement. But obviously, last March, with the sort of very sudden shift in working practices, most of our 1,200 staff suddenly working from home sort of overnight. I mean, you'll all have been in the same boat here. I'm not saying anything that most of you won't have experienced yourselves, but we had many staff who were, not properly kitted up to work from home. A lot of them were working from, kitchen tables, bedroom floors, that sort of thing. Many of our staff personally affected by the pandemic. But as a housing association, we still needed to make sure that we could continue to deliver services to our over 100,000 customers in around sort of 48,000 homes. And in order to do that, we needed to keep our staff sort of supported, informed and connected. So with everybody suddenly working at home, our staff were more dependent on our digital services than ever before. So really Hyve and Workplace formed they gave us the perfect foundation to sort of base our COVID, communications, employee communications on, which was absolutely fantastic. And we had really good engagement across Workplace and Hive at the beginning of the pandemic last March, but we've really seen levels sort of rise stratospherically. We've seen our highest ever engagement across Workplace during the pandemic. I mean, if we compare the engagement just before, in the month before, sort of March 2020, whatever it was, to 3 months later, I think we saw engagement on Workplace go up by 260%, which is amazing, and just really shows how how much staff became sort of reliant and dependent on our digital services. And as a comms team, we put all our efforts into that. Really, we wanted to make sure that staff had access to sort of timely, trusted, independent, at the click of a button on any device, 24/7. I mean, anybody who's on the call today who's working in comms will know how brilliant it was that the government kept announcing quite big changes to policy, often overnight changes at the sort of tea time briefings, 5 p.m. So we, wanted to make sure that staff knew the impact on them as quickly as possible. So we would be working really hard with senior leaders to make sure we got information out across our digital channels, which would be Workplace and Hive, as soon as possible that evening. And we saw, again, record numbers of staff using our digital platforms out of hours, because they came to know that that was the place to get the sort of their trusted, reliable information. It would always be there. We'd get something up there as soon as we could. And, we saw record levels of engagement. I mean, we totted up for another presentation we did last week, the total number of page views we had across our intranet to all of our coronavirus information pages for staff. That's about all sorts of things, about working practices, if we're working in customers' homes, working from home tips, safety, health, safety, all sorts of things. Obviously, safety being our number one priority. And we saw that we'd had over 20,000 page views to our coronavirus pages across Hive during the last year. And that's absolutely staggering and absolutely fantastic. And Hive was brilliant because it was a flexible sort of modular homepage. It's obviously the forced homepage every time people, turn on the internet on their work computers. And we were able to use that to sort of pin a sort of permanent coronavirus story up there, which we kept permanently updated. And so staff were looking at that, regularly, because that was always kept up to date, always had the same URL. If it needed to link to any other media, we could do that across Workplace to get sort of interaction and feedback. We're also able to bring video to the front page of Hive, which is fantastic. The previous intranet, if you wanted to watch a video, you had to click off YouTube. It's a really low engagement with video. But one thing we were really keen to do with Hive, which is fantastic that we already had this in place, was to be able to bring video to the homepage for all staff. And our executive team have fully embraced video during this time. We found it's been fantastic. We found it's a really humanizing sort of medium. It's fantastic for delivering messages that might be sensitive or complex or anything like that. Our chief exec, Peter Denton, has really been a star of the show across this. He has sort of fully embraced video. He'd never really used it before. I mean, we had Hive, and then we had Workplace, which allows you to do live broadcasts. And he'd never really used it in that way before. He's an ex-finance director. It's not really, his natural place to be. But, he knew he had to step up, and he has started using video fantastically. And turns out he's an absolute natural. He, he's got a very relaxed, very authentic, very natural style. He has a few notes, but he certainly isn't reading. He's very natural. He's able to deal with any questions then and there and be very honest if he can't answer a question. So that's been absolutely fantastic as well. So we've had this sort of multimedia approach, but all brought together by our intranet, which I think, is the real success. Staff know where to go to get the information. There's this one place on Hive, which links out to all the other resources or information or videos or whatever everywhere else on the intranet. And we've just seen, huge levels of engagement. I mean, I'm going on and on now, but I'm quite passionate about this. But we do a staff survey, as I'm sure all of you do, every few months to, work out what your engagement score is. And we were absolutely thrilled that the staff survey we had carried out just before the pandemic took hold, showed staff engagement of, I've written down the numbers here, I think it's 86% in March 2020. And then we did another one at the end of April 2020, and staff engagement had actually gone up, not down, which we think is really testament to, you know, the digital communications work we were doing across our intranet and workplace. And that just sort of says it all, really.
Yeah. It sounds like it's been such a fantastic enabler for remote working under duress that we've all had to you know, adopt really quickly in the last 12 months, but also sort of setting you up for that hybrid approach going forward. So yes, so we can see that's going to be a really, you know, key tool for Hyde in future. Are there any sort of key features and functions in particular that you find beneficial from the comms team and that your users are sort of interacting with most frequently?
Across Hyve and workplace?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess it's the sort of, you know, it's the flexible modular approach that we've adopted with you for our homepage. So we've got our sort of featured news area, which enables us to sort of bring those sort of key stories to the fore, and so that staff every day when they turn on their computer, they know they're going to see the sort of the highest priority, the most sort of critical stories up there right at the top. And we've seen huge engagement with that, because staff know that's the place you go for, you know, the sort of the top stories. And then again, we've got our workplace feed, which also sits on the homepage, which brings across all the key stories that have been posted on workplace that day. So there's just literally one click if you want to head off to workplace, or you can just, like I say, stay in, you know, if nothing else, the way that we've set it up, staff don't even have to click into the stories to sort of see the headline and the strap line, and just get that flavour, sort of keep up to date, keep informed with what's going on around the business. So that's been really popular. And we didn't have that before. We had a sort of a notice board where you couldn't prioritize or pin anything, and anybody was allowed to add anything to there. So it had a mix of key corporate messages from our chief executive alongside cake sales in one of our local offices, if you see what I mean. So it was a real jumble of information. It wasn't really doing the job for anybody. So the way that we have sort of restructured the whole architecture of our homepage around sort of that hierarchy of information, so the most important information at the top, etc., etc., and then sort of, you know, people got time, they want to read more, they can, but we make sure that, you know, it's sort of that the page is front loaded, if you like, so people can see the most important information first. And that's been a real priority, you know, especially information overload and everything like that. The more that we can do to help people find the information they need when they need it, you know, the better, really. Yeah. And we've had you know, really good feedback about that as well. One of our recent surveys was asking staff, have you been able to find the information you needed to do your job over the last year? And 91% said a resounding yes. So again, we call that a real win. And
That's
sort of, yeah, exactly. We're, you know, it's really sort of gratifying to you know, have the evidence to prove that what you're doing has had a really big impact on, you know, on the business and on your staff. Because as much as my team are fantastic, you know them all well, Jenny, and we all work really closely together, but we've also, you know, we couldn't have done it without the engagement and enthusiasm of all the staff around the business as well, all of whom have sort of got involved. And, you know, we've seen so many people posting on workplace and suggesting stories for Hyve and things like that, who never would have done that before. So we've really created this sort of buzzing, supportive online community, if you like, you know, which is, it's brilliant, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And was that approach part of your planning approach for Hyve sort of 2-3 years ago, in terms of bringing colleagues along with you on that journey in terms of shaping what would go into the new intranet?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the sort of you know, aims behind our new intranet was to support this culture of achievement at Hyve, which is all about, I always call it Hyve, it's Hyde, but this culture of achievement at Hyde, which is all about keeping employees supported, connected, empowered, and that sort of emphasizing that two-way interaction. So yeah, that was you know, one of the big priorities was to make sure it was interactive and two-way, and that everyone could be sort of seen, heard and valued, if you like, and workplace sort of slotted in perfectly. And so together it's a bit of a match made in heaven for us. So
Yeah.
I'm an advocate of both.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And with obviously such a sort of a large, wide-ranging organisation, both sort of functionally, geographically, different directorates, how do you strike the balance between content that everyone needs to see and content that making sure that things are really relevant for individuals as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, and that is definitely something we have to bear in mind. I mean, we're a really close comms team, and we work really closely together, and also with key stakeholders across the business. So we're always very conscious, to make sure that all different areas of the business are represented. So it's kind of sort of planned into the way we work as a comms team, to be honest. But also across workplace, we made sure that the kind of content we shared wasn't just the sort of content that appealed to the massive extroverts out there. And we've got a lot of them at Hyde, and a lot of them we've seen appearing on Workplace during this time. I mean, there's plenty of staff, from sort of, people who work in customer services to senior level directors who want to sort of put on a costume and do a singing, dancing routine, that sort of thing. But, we had to realise as well that, that's not everybody. So we were really really keen as a digital comms team to make sure that the sort of content we shared on there and tried to get people to engage with was representative and wasn't just aimed at extroverts, but appealed sort of across the board. So maybe some people aren't quite so exhibitionist as others, so we've encouraged people to set up their own sort of interest groups across Workplace, which is something you can do. You just sort of set up groups yourself. We've sort of enabled staff to be able to do that. So we've seen all sorts of groups, people's lockdown hobbies. People have taken up, I don't know, gardening, running, reading, all sorts of things, photography. There's a fantastic photography group across Workplace where people are sharing, their pictures that they've taken. So yeah, lots of lockdown hobbies have come to the fore, but then also lots of our talented exhibitionist colleagues have come to the fore as well. But there's a thing that we've introduced across the intranet to bring people together and have a bit of fun, because that's another purpose of our digital internal comms is to have some fun. And you don't have that water cooler chat. We haven't been seeing colleagues, so we wanted to create this sort of buzzing online community. So one thing we do on a Thursday or Friday lunchtime is we have our Workplace lunchtime live lounge, which is where anyone can volunteer. Doesn't have to be singing, although it often is, but we've got all sorts of staff out there who can sing, play guitar, play piano, and they just come on, they go live on Workplace, and then we share it on Hyve as well for a few minutes and sort of share their talents, sing a couple of songs. Somebody's read poetry, somebody's done a sort of traditional dance from her hometown. So yeah, that's been absolutely fantastic as well. So one of my apprentices has actually said she was quite anxious when this all started about working from home and working solely digitally and not being around people. And she said, although that's obviously still been a concern, she said because of Hyve and Workplace, she feels that she's got to know colleagues even better than she did before, just through sort of seeing people on Workplace and those new connections and sort of people sharing and supporting, that sort of thing.
That's so important, isn't it? I think, that being able to almost have your arms around those people that might need that support in the organisation is so important to be able to facilitate that. So what's next in terms of your internal comms transformation? And I guess a related question, do you have any advice for anyone that might be thinking about embarking on a similar project?
Well, what's next is we always say in my team, my team's motto is digital is never done, because it never is. It's not a project. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's a sort of a program, and it evolves. And my boss might say that I say that just to sort of keep myself in a job, but it's actually true. Digital is never done. It's never finished. You have to run to stand still, it feels quite often. And so in the spirit of that and the continuous improvement and development, we're embarking on quite a big sort of sort of, well, it's not, well, yeah, I guess it is a transformation of our intranet. We're not replacing it as ever. We're sort of adding to it, improving it in a sort of agile and flexible way. So the way it's structured at the moment, there's still quite a lot of information which is organized by silo, if you like, by directorate. And I'm sure a lot of people will be in the same boat, that our business never stays the same. I mean, I've been there 6-7 years. I don't know how many restructures and how many different teams and directorates I've been in, but a silo approach doesn't work when your business is constantly evolving and changing as well. So we are completely ripping up the information architecture that we've got on our intranet at the moment, ripping up all the silos and creating a sort of brand new intuitive information architecture and navigation, which will get rid of the silo approach and use the integration that we've got between our intranet and Active Directory to be able to deliver more personalized content to our staff. So hopefully that will again help people see the information they need to see to do their job and reduce that information overload, and just make us all more efficient, give us all more time and make us feel sort of more informed in a sort of easier, more efficient way. So yeah, and with that there's also going to be all sorts of other improvements. We're going to roll out more dynamic pages that are sort of more dynamically updated between by Active Directory, so sort of less manual intervention. We've got quite a lot of web editors who edit their different sections on the internet. We're going to look at improving the experience for them, so creating some kind of dashboard that's going to make it a lot easier for them to manage their pages. So a lot of emphasis on efficiency, streamlining, that sort of thing, and then, like I say, as much personalization of content delivery as we can to make everything sort of slicker and smoother, and flexible to future changes, because digital is never done, remember.
Digital is never done. I love that. Emma, thank you so much. That's been so fascinating. I'm conscious of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. I know we had a question from Liz in the chat, which is about how maintenance teams or any other remote teams access the intranet, with them being out and about. Liz's organisation are finding it hard to engage with them.
Yeah, I won't say that's not a challenge. And for sure, it is a work in progress. However, our intranet and workplace are, mobile friendly. So we've made sure that the bookmark to Hyve and the workplace app are ready installed on all work phones and devices, so to try and remove as many obstacles and barriers as possible. When we launched Hyve and Workplace, we also went round doing road shows to different teams across the business, and we made really sure that we included our remote workers. I remember once we had to be down in Havant at like 7:30 in the morning before a lot of our trades went out to do what they do in people's homes, that sort of thing. So sometimes it is just getting out there yourself and having that face-to-face contact with people. Also identifying the easy targets, what I'm trying to say, within those teams, you sort of influencers, and sort of really getting them on board, and making sure that they're the ones who can sort of help sort of cascade it out. We also introduced 2 years ago, when we launched Hyve and Workplace, a digital ambassadors program. So that was to identify those sort of, they didn't have to be technical experts or anything like that, but it was to identify those people who were passionate, interested, and wanted to learn more about digital, and wanted to spread the word. So we sort of we got volunteers. Actually, we didn't actually have to strong arm anybody into doing that. We pretty much got volunteers to come and join. So we always give them sort of advance notice of any changes we're going to make. We let them test them, we let them feedback, and they're also responsible for sort of cascading and getting a bit of momentum going within their teams and feeding back any problems to us. So we've got our own little workplace group with them, and there's a lot of two-way interaction with our digital ambassadors. So I'd say they're really key as well. And also senior leaders leading by example, putting important stuff on Workplace. Peter, our chief executive, the one who I said has gone fully digital, and yeah, now we can't get him off the blooming thing. Yeah, he's always on there. But yeah, so he has been really instrumental as well, and sort of leading by example. He now does monthly all staff broadcasts on Workplace, which are regularly watched by about 85% of staff. And, you know, that is the forum that he will often choose to make quite significant announcements. So you kind of need to be there, really. So, you know, it's a mix of all those things, really. But yeah, I won't say it's without challenges. I'd be lying.
That's great. And Liz, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you so much, Emma. We are running a slightly shorter Hive today, just because Emma's got another important appointment to zoom off to. But thank you so much. That's been really fascinating. Thank you for your time. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to follow up. We will be sharing some follow-up information after today's call. And obviously, Prodo team are all on hand if you have any questions for us. But thank you all so much for attending today.